give me a mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mic check. 1,
Looks
2,
good. Looks good.
3, 4.
Yeah. Woo. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90. Shop soccer90.com for all your FC Dallas, U.S. Soccer, and, of course, international club gear. New in the store, Adidas shin guards in both youth and adult sizes. And don't forget that Third Degree listeners get 25% off when they use the promo code Third Degree at checkout. Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fans. Welcome to another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, I'm Peter, and joining me today, because one person has decided he's got better things to do than join us on the podcast, it's just me again with Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hello, Peter. Now, admittedly, Dan is in the middle of repairing his flooded apartment and moving out of it at the same time, so he's a little overloaded. But
I thought he was traveling today. I thought I saw somewhere in the chat group he was in a car headed to some sort of like snowy vacation or something.
Well, I think that's just a weekender thing, but that's not till later today. It's like just in general this week. He's like, he in the busted pipe thing or whatever, his apartment got demolished. So he had to pack it up and move out of it, and now he's moving to a new apartment and repairing his old apartment at the same time. So the poor kid's underneath a little pile of stuff.
Yeah, poor Dan.
However, Peter, before we start, I have a breaking piece of news.
Is this an official Huntsman dump?
It is a Huntsman dump indeed. It is not going to be earth-shaking from anybody but perhaps you and I.
Oh, okay.
But it is an earth-shaking dump, and that is there's going to be a limited amount of media allowed back at FC Dallas training.
Oh,
I know.
Really?
So excited. Yeah, they've got some new media policies, and it's probably a very short list. Dan and I are on it, I know. So we will be attending some practices soon and have actual eyeballs on FC Dallas players and tell you how they're doing. I'm so excited.
As early as this week, potentially?
Yes, I think as early as this week. As early as
this coming week.
Monday, this coming week. Yeah.
Yeah, we're recording this on Friday the 2nd.
Yep.
So that's awesome. That's great news. That's a huge advancement in this, because this has been so difficult for you and Dan to try to do this for the good listeners and followers of the account when you can't actually put eyes, as you say, on players, especially these new players, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole lot of distancing involved, and you can only stand certain places, which I totally understand. But I got a pair of binoculars. It's going to be fun. I'll be out there.
It's frustrating because officially the media is not allowed to go. And you and Dan in particular are really honest about this, because it's very clear that if you wanted to, you could have gone out to the facility and stood at a distance, and they probably could have never even noticed you there, because I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have been out up at Frisco with their kids' games during Dallas Cup or other things and said, oh, yeah, I stood there and watched Dallas practice. I saw so-and-so do this, and I saw Paxton running like that. And I'm like, wow, that's really silly. They're not letting the media do this too. But so it's good. That's a good shift. I'm glad to hear that news. I know you're excited about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they took it seriously, so we took it seriously. I mean, there was even a time where they thought they heard secondhand that one of our people was in the parking lot and that we were trying to circumvent, and we got a phone call about it. So, I mean, it's like, I'm sure there's some legal insurance reasons or whatever. I mean, I don't know, so we're not going to go to war over something stupid like that. We just bided our time, and eventually they figured out a policy that they're making this small change, and there's a certain amount of media that'll be allowed to go. So I'm super excited about getting out there and being able to watch practice again. That's all that really matters. I can now go again. That's good.
Yeah, that is fantastic news. And we will talk about, and part of the reason why the podcast has been delayed is not only because of our schedules. You've been doing Dallas Cup stuff and Dan doing stuff, and I got stuff going on. We also kind of wanted to save up content because Dallas has now played a couple of scrimmages or cup games, whatever we want to call them. So we'll talk about those in a little bit. But we also should start the podcast officially with the news. I think this is somewhere close to completely out of the blue, which is that FC Dallas have sold Thiago Santos to Gremio back in the Brazilian First Division. And while I'm not terribly fussed by this in any way, shape, or form, on a scale of, if I had to put a list of people together a week ago of who I thought Dallas could sell, Santos would not have been in the top 5.
Yeah, this is as out of the blue as any transfer I can think of. There's been cases where guys were kind of thinking about leaving. We hear stuff. We hear like, boy, he's not happy. He's kind of mopey. I didn't get any of that with Thiago Santos. So I have no idea if that's a factor. So it was a complete surprise when it happened. When you sit down and think about it, you can make reasons in your head while, okay, I could see why they did that. The guy's 31, right? That if the numbers that have been reported are accurate, and let's just assume that they're ballpark for sure, then you're making basically almost double your money, depending on whether he went for $1 million or $1.5 million that's being reported around there. The part where it's to Gremio makes all the sense in the world because it's Andres Zanata's old club, right? So there's a pre-existing relationship. And then you think back to last season, and there were times where, as good as Thiago Santos was, where he won the league in duels and all that kind of stuff, there were still moments where he burnt out or got overworked or overloaded or something and had some bad stretches. So there were definitely some workload management issues with him. And Dallas has got an overloaded midfield of young kids that they want to start playing too. So there's lots of factors that make this all kind of make sense when you put it all together. But nonetheless, I, like you, a week ago, there's no way in the world I would have predicted Thiago Santos was about to get traded. I mean, this really is out of nowhere.
Okay, but here's the question I want somebody to answer for me, which is because everybody's glomming onto the fact that they sold him for $1 million, and I'm still not 100% sure I know what Dallas paid to acquire him in the first place. I know that Transfer Market and different websites have different amounts available. Dallas clearly paid something for him, so it's not like they just got a hard, cold $1 million back in pure profit. No. But even if they did, let's just say they got $1 million back in pure profit from the guy. Does this move make FC Dallas better on the field for the 2021 season?
No, it doesn't. There's a lot of things that keep me thinking that Dallas is bleeding money, because this is the kind of deal you do because you made back $500,000 or $700,000 or whatever you made back because you needed the money for something, right? This is like if you only are thinking about on the field, Unless you believe that like the 2 or 3 years you have left on the contract with him were a problem and you needed to get rid of him because of that, I don't think I would have gone that far. I think a couple more years of him would have been fine as long as you manage the workload. So there's got to be some extenuating factor, like he asked to go. That's entirely possible. He's never played outside of Brazil before this year.
Do we know if his family or anybody has been here this entire time, or with COVID he's been separated from family this whole year?
I do not know officially, but it would not surprise me at all that they couldn't come. There's been people that have had, like when Franco Har first come, he had problems getting his kids here. They got here eventually, but like I know there was some delays in that process. Some of that could be school related on his side. I don't know, but unless he wanted to go, this is a move that smacks of long-term thinking, right? I'm going to play some kids this year. Maybe I'm kind of in a little bit of a rebuild mode with my front line anyway. Thiago Santos is not getting any younger. I really, really, really need some money at the start of the year, because even if they release things that open up at the later of the year, I'm going to take a bloodbath in the stands at the start of the year. The Reynolds money is not coming in for a while yet, as near as we can tell. So, despite the fact that was the big hang up, apparently it's like the whole loan thing is certain. There are some back channels with the Toyota that we can work through. But, the bottom line is that they're obviously willing to go with some other version of FC Dallas that are going to be interesting to see what Lucci does with his options, because there are a few.
Yeah, I know $1 million is a lot of money, and two, they didn't make $1 million off this deal.
No,
I'm not. Depending on who you listen to, they may have profited as little as $100,000. But even if it was a full $1 million, that's not a break or a make or break amount of money for the Hunt family. FC Dallas isn't going out of business if they don't sell Thiago Santos. Their bottom line may not look as good, but again, it does. I just got a question of why this was done at this moment. Did he want out? Was he not happy here? Was he homesick? Did he not feel like it was what he thought he had bought into? Did Dallas decide maybe he's a little older and we don't really need him? because we'll talk about this when we talk about the first San Antonio game. When I was watching that, I distinctly remember watching Santos on the field going, A, that guy has gotten slower, or B, he's just not trying very hard. Because there were several moments where I watched San Antonio guys just dribble right past him, and he made no effort to chase anybody down, and that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
So, I got a ton of questions about this. Again, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and at the end of the day, I'm excited that it opens opportunities for Tessman and Cerrillo and maybe some other players down the road and kind of unclogs that central midfield. But there's got to be another part of this story we haven't been told.
Well, the one possible other part of the story is that, Zanata the other day hinted at a winger coming in sometime in the next whatever's soon, quote unquote. So they needed an international spot, unless for some reason we're talking about a domestic player, which is highly unlikely. They need another international spot. And maybe they looked at the international roster and said, who can we get rid of for a little bit of money that won't kill us on the field to get rid of?
Yeah. Who could we get rid of? How could we get a slot? Who maybe really is maybe it's all a bunch of puzzle pieces that just fell together.
Yeah.
There's a club looking for a player. Here's a player that maybe isn't 100% happy here. A player that we also aren't 100% sure really is helping us on the field. And hey, we could also make a few bucks off the deal. It could be as simple as that, right?
Yeah. And maybe Gremio calls Hunter Zanata and says, hey, any chance we could have Thiago Santos? And he thinks, why, yes, you can have Thiago Santos. Here you go. I don't need him anymore.
I'm surprised Gremio was willing to pay that much money for the guy, especially willing to pay more than whatever was Dallas paid for him a year ago when he's a year older. Like that part, out of all of this, really, the most surprising part of it is that element.
Well, he's obviously pretty well respected, in terms of like bringing a never say die attitude and some grit or whatever. So, obviously they really felt they needed that because this is a late signing too. The windows are dwindling, right? So they must have at the last second been panicking, and they may have perhaps overpaid. And if you want to be honest about it, for a 31-year-old out of desperation for whatever reason. So there's a whole lot of pieces in this puzzle, as you say. And this is one that's kind of fascinating to try and sit back and try and figure out what the heck's going on until we can pin somebody down on it.
Yeah, and again, I'll just reiterate my initial question is, does that make this team better? Which will lead me to you, Buzz, which is, so how does this rejigger the center midfield setup for Lucci?
Well, the obvious straight swap is that Edwin Cerrillo is ready to play, and you just stick him right in. Now, by all reports, he's had a fantastic spring. Lucci committed him just a day ago, or was it 2 days ago, on the media call, talked about what a great spring Edwin's having and how progression of kids is not linear, that they have their ups and downs, and he's having a great, whatever you want to call this spring training, this preseason. It's been longer than they expected, but that's certainly part of it. The other option is that and I know, as much as we don't like it, Lucci has liked Acosta as a 6 before. Back when they had this idea of this triple pivot idea, which is basically where you play 3 8s and they all just take turns swapping all the time, even if one of them is sort of a nominal 6. So you could easily see some sort of Acosta, Tessman, Ricarte, 888 thing happening. That's a completely viable system in Lucci ball. So straight swap for Edwin or a 888 sort of system are the two most viable looks, and we wondered how Tanner was going to get playing time when he seems to be outplaying Acosta in a lot of ways last year when Acosta was banged up. Well, there's a way, right? That's a pretty simple swap.
Well, it does. It's now official. We kind of heard about it on the periphery for 24 hours or so, but the club did make it official yesterday. I think it was.
Yeah, yesterday.
Made the note. It was interesting that he did play in the San Antonio scrimmage just less than a week ago. He started, in fact, despite some reports otherwise that were damningly incorrect. So it is interesting that he, in fact, played and now is gone just a few days later, but we move forward. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to talk about the scrimmage, the same scrimmage back on Saturday before we talk about today's scrimmage?
Just a little bit, because we actually got to saw it, and there was an interesting formation, and we got to read a couple of things about it. I did my instant reaction, so I have some thoughts about it. But where do you want to start with that game?
Yeah, again, it was they're playing down in San Antonio. I didn't think the team looked particularly good. It was really slow and But it's early. It's one of those deals where you watch it and you go, oh my gosh, this is not attractive and a little bit concerning. And then you're like, well, wait, it's early in the preseason. Don't get too screwed up about it.
Yeah, there were several pieces in that game that were fascinating. They were indeed flat. That's fine. They probably took a bus down there, I would imagine, and that's never great. They're still trying to work everybody up towards fitness, and by all reports, today's was much better. So, one of the most interesting things about the game in San Antonio was the 3-4-3 formation, which is basically a variation of a 3-5-2, which uses the same sort of three-man front line that Dallas is used to with just a three-man back line. So it's kind of interesting. Ryan was on the right again for the third straight game. Majoma was at the left wing back because Johnny Nelson's not really a wing back. And Jose Martinez looked great. He was right as good as he was. And then,
so of the three center backs, how was it lined up?
Martinez was on the left center back, and I should have opened up the graphic. Matt Hedges was in the middle, and Rasan was at right center back.
Okay.
That's probably not a system that they're going to use all the time, but it's something Lucci likes to mix in. And it is interesting because it is a really good fit for Minjoma, who was on the left that time. And Lucci talked about how he does both sides equally as well. I think there's a weird issue in terms of like you're flip-flopping Ryan in order to put him on the right, and then you're putting Minjoma off of his left onto his left. So you're kind of flipping both, even though Ryan's naturally right-footed. We've talked many times about how he's better on the left, but Lucci doubled down in the media call, which was 2 days ago, that he's not really experimenting in the back anymore. He knows what he has. So Ryan at the right seems to be the thing, because Ryan was, and again, the scrimmage that was today, Ryan was at the right again. So we're for sure looking at Ryan on the right. The left side becomes the question, which we'll get to in a minute for the rest of it. And on that game in particular, the three takeaways from the front line were that Jodir O'Brien is Fabian Castillo 2.0 in every way possible. He's older, but it's the same like vertical mess into the box and then kind of bounces around and all that kind of stuff. Freddie Vargas is the best thing going, I think, in terms of his ability to play anywhere across the front and be dangerous. He moves around a lot and drifts and comes inside, very false wing. And then for me, Franco Jara was just worthless for how long he played. And Pepe came in 5 minutes, Pepe did more than Jara did the whole game. So I think it sets up that you're down to basically that two big, huge questions, which is who's going to be the outside backs if Ryan really is on the right, who's on the left, and then is someone going to beat out Franco Jara? Because to me, he looks terrible.
So Cerrillo came in late in that game and did replace Santos. Did you take any note of him in that particular performance?
Not particular, other than it looked like he looks for North Texas, which is kind of what it was. It was a bunch of, a couple of academy kids played, and one or two guys from North Texas played. So, he was as he was at the end of last season for North Texas, which was sort of a dominant midfield presence and clogging it all up, and doing good tackling and stuff. But nothing that made me go, oh yeah, start him over Santos. At the same time, you and I watched that game and both thought Santos was a little flat. And for all we know, that was the final point where they're like, you know what? We can't trade this guy. It's not going to cost us anything if we put Cerrillo in there. So, such as the preseason, little things like that, they often do things that are tests where you see one guy in a different place. It's a test, or one guy, this is the last game, we're going to look at you. And if you're not, they don't tell you that necessarily, but if you don't bring it, maybe we will trade you, that kind of thing.
Well, I doubt we'll ever get the full story behind the Santos sell, but I'm just convinced there's more to it than we've been told so far.
I would agree with that too. There must be something else going on, and maybe someday we can find out. But
well, and just to be clear, I don't necessarily say that in the sense that I'm assuming it's nefarious or somebody did something bad or anything like that. The timing and everything of it just feels so odd and so weird that it just makes you wonder what else is going on. Because at the end of the day, if the question is, does it make the team better? And the answer is, well, it did, because they opened up an international slot and they bought this guy instead, who ends up making the team better, then the answer is yes. But if it's just getting rid of Santos and letting Tessman have more time or Cerrillo have more time, then I'm not sure the answer to that question is not no.
I mean, you basically started the guy who played every single game for you last year. You traded him, sold him away 2 weeks before the season starting. That timing alone is suspect.
Yeah.
It makes you raise your eyebrows that something is going on that we are not privy to. So there are all kinds of questions. Not that I'm down on the move. I actually think it's fine. I'm okay with it. So, but nonetheless, there are questions.
Yeah, both things can be true.
Yeah.
We can think that the deal ultimately is a good idea and also wonder why in the hell it happened, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, again, one of the great mysteries of the world is that this club is participating in preseason games, yet nobody gets to watch them as they played San Antonio again today. And it was here, correct? Up in Frisco.
Yes. Yeah. It's Toyota Stadium. Yeah.
In the stadium, which has a full capability of streaming this game on the internet for little to no effort, did not do that today, but you did get some information as to how it went down.
Yeah, some people were able to watch. I have no idea what
Explain this to me.
Yeah, well, they're not official media, so that's fine. So some people I know got in, and I've got a couple of people reaching out. So here's the lineup. Again, Ryan at right back. So that's 4 straight games. So that's obviously the thing, right?
Okay.
So Hedges, Martinez, and on the left, Johnny Nelson. So far, Johnny Nelson is getting the look.
Four-man back line.
Four-man back line.
Okay.
So far, Johnny Nelson is getting the look. And as we've often talked about, Lucci, defensively, more conservative. Not a shock that it's Nelson and Ryan looking like 2 weeks from opening day, right? So not a shock at all. Starting at the 6, Edwin Cerrillo.
Hoo-yah.
Edwin got the straight swap nod in for Thiago Santos. Now, maybe.
And by the way, wearing the number
6. Yeah, number 6. I mean, for them to. Yeah, Lucci even talked on the call about how he had some really great meetings with Edwin over the winter. And that includes, in my mind, giving him the 6, making a big deal about it. And even there is a tack that says if you only found out you're trading away your 6 like a day before the scrimmage, you're not going to mess it all up. You just put in the other guy. So we shouldn't 100% read this as Edwin's going to start opening day. But nonetheless, he did start today. The other 2 people in midfield were Ricarte, which is what you would accept, and Nicky Hernandez. Now, don't get too excited about that because Tanner and Brian Acosta both just are coming back from international duty and are not integrated back in yet. So essentially, you're out of, shockingly, because Thomas Robertson's hurt, you're out of 8s other than Nicky. So that's why Sedman and Nicky are in there.
Hey, Buzz.
Yeah.
Who's Nicky Hernandez?
You guys don't know Nicky Hernandez? Okay, Nicky Hernandez is the first-round draft pick that Dallas. I thought everyone would know. He played for North Texas Soccer Club and was under contract with them. Dallas drafted their own player, and then they just signed him to a first-team contract. Apparently today he wore 88 instead of 80. He's going to wear 80. 88s would have been better, kid. Stick with the 88, but he's wearing 80. And then the front line was Javier Obreon, no surprise. Franco Jara, no surprise. And Freddie Vargas continues to be the guy at left wing. And for me, probably the revelation of spring training is Freddie Vargas. So that's your lineup for today.
All right. So by any account, did you get positive, negative, indifferent reports on the game? I know they won 5-0, which seems pretty impressive.
Well, Obreon scored twice and also helped facilitate the own goal.
Oh, he used the dark side.
Yeah, so apparently 2 people that I talked to said that he was super active and engaged and looking better, more integrated. So step forward, the Darth Jader looking better. That's good. Franco Jara was apparently whatever. Again, and Vargas impressed, moving around and doing some wing swapping. I got a report that said Eben looked great, that he's really good at, this is what he was really good at in the academy too, really good at picking up the ball, cleaning it up, finding it, and quickly getting it forward or to the side to the right people. That's the way he played on the academy. Get it, move it quick. So that's really great to hear. Possession in general, I heard, was much better. The old possession with purpose, not just passing it around, but actually moving forward with it. I hear that was much better. And then you'll be super excited because in the 61st minute, the first player in off the bench was Paxton Pomykal.
Yep. Be still my beating Paxton Pomykal heart. Really?
Yeah.
Any word how he did?
Not specifically. Just I think people were just super excited. He came in played in the midfield for Nicky Hernandez. Came in the 61st minute. So, if you're on the Paxton watch, that's super awesome to see him actually get game time. I had learned that he was in San Antonio and legitimately available, and they just chose not to. Mm-hmm. So super great to see him actually get out there. I mean, I'm tapping the brakes on him being anywhere near opening day. If this is your first minute, it's no way opening day, and it's going to be a while, I think, before he's allowed to really hit somebody, because you and I, we've talked to people that have said he barely is allowed to do much in training even still.
Yeah. I mean, again, talking to some people who happen to be standing near the practice field while they've been out for Dallas Cup or other whatever they were up at Toyota soccer facility for, they've been watching some of the practices, and I've gotten some, I don't know if this is the right word, concerning reports about Paxton just clearly not being up to speed with everybody else, but that's not necessarily a surprise based on what we know and the fact that he had a setback and all of those things. So the fact that he actually got into the game today, frankly, is a bit of a surprise. I'm glad to hear that he got some time today.
Yeah, and on the media call this week, Lucci said that his setback was unrelated to the hip. So what I'm sure in a way it is related. He wasn't specific. So it's good that it's not the exact same area that was the surgery. So that's positive as well.
Yeah.
So also late in the game, Ryan switched to left back late in the game, and Minjama came in at right back. So obviously it seems clear to me that it's Ryan right, Nelson left at this point, with Minjama being a legitimate bench supporting tool. Unless you're going wing back style, in which case, in Lucci's mind, Johnny's a left center back, and then Edwin is a wing back and can play either side or whatever. Khalil El Madkour came in for O'Brien at one point. Brisson came in for Hedges, and Pepe spelled Hara again. So those are your basic rotations right now in terms of like first 5-6 off the bench. They did play like a later scrimmage, that was like half North Texas and Academy versus the people that kind of came in late. Sort of afterwards, put that together so that those guys could get some games and some action. Apparently, Dante Sealy scored a good goal on that. Other than that, I don't really have any information in particular. But I got a couple of the reports again that Eddie Munjama was really impactful coming off the bench, and he was one of the first people Lucci mentioned when somebody asked him who was having a great spring. I don't think Eddie's ready to start still, and I think that's pretty clear when we watch these formations and tactics. But he definitely is in the mix as a piece that Lucci's looking to use at this point.
Okay. So just to kind of set the table, we're now a couple of weeks out from the start of the season. You are feeling like the following is the starting 11 at this moment for the team. It's Nelson on the left, Ryan on the right in the back, with Martinez and Hedges in the middle. And then your center middle three are going to be Acosta, Ricarte, and Cerrillo.
Well, it'll be Acosta, Ricarte, and somebody. Right. Today it was Edwin, but again, this was the first blush. And like I said,
who else would it be, do you
think? Tanner. It'll either be with Edwin as a straight 6, or it'll be that triple pivot 8 look with Ricarte. And look, there's 2 weeks of opening day. Acosta and Tanner just got back, and Santos just got traded. So we have a very short window to figure out what it's going to be. And that game on Wednesday, which I'm pretty sure media are allowed to be going to now. I know there's some limited tickets available, so for people that are season ticket holders, I think that's the way it is. You have to have a season ticket holder.
The Austin game on
Wednesday.
Isn't it Wednesday afternoon, isn't it?
At 4, I think, and then they go down to Houston for their final tune-up. So like those 2 games, basically, you're going to see whatever they do. I'm sure at this point that'll be pretty indicative of what's going to happen on opening day. So, and then the front is, not to steal your thunder, but the front is Vargas, Hara, and O'Brien at this point.
All right. Very good. That makes sense to me in this moment. Now, what I want to lead into now, because and maybe to kind of close this, they do play Austin in Frisco, like we were saying, on Wednesday at 4, and there are limited tickets, you said?
I think you have to be a season ticket holder and then if you are a season ticket holder, then you can buy a ticket to this game.
And is it being shown online?
I think this one's being streamed. I think this is the one. It's being streamed. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't look it up.
That would be delightfully pleasant of them to do that.
Yeah, since I'm planning on going.
But if I can go, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about real quickly, since the last time we did a podcast, is it was funny. I was going back and reviewing a conversation you and I had on the radio show on Saturday, where I was getting your insights and thoughts about the U.S. men's national under-23 team playing against Honduras, and us kind of saying, well, is there anything we should really worry about against playing against Honduras? And you and I were and whoever was on the show with me at the time, we're all like, yeah, well, this shouldn't be a problem.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. But then again, I realized that if you go back and look at Honduras' record against the United States in qualifying matches, they kind of have this country's number. And sure enough, it did happen again. The U.S. fails to qualify for the Olympics. Yeah. And the really noticeable thing out of that game, to me, that's related to Dallas was what an amazingly positive impact Tanner Tessman had in the few minutes he got towards the end of the game when the United States clearly needed to go grab a goal.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway for me too. That and that how much above the game Jesus' talent was. He's the guy that's a senior team player too. And that's basically the giant misfires that they didn't bring a good enough squad, the bottom line. That's not all on Jason, it's partially on Jason. But it was super positive because the reason Tanner was there as like the last guy on the roster is to get a taste for a camp, get taste for big competition with the group. If you get him some minutes, awesome. And then the last game, he came in and looked pretty damn good and was pretty impactful. So huge win for Tanner Tessman and his development. I mean, I would expect him to come into the FC Dallas camp on a high, flying and make a step forward. This is the kind of thing that can launchpad you to a great season.
Do you have any particular reaction or thoughts about the overall, the impact or the meaning or I don't know, whatever you want to say about the failure to qualify for the Olympics again?
Yeah, we don't take it seriously enough. I know that there's all these things about you can only get certain players, you can't get them released and all that stuff. But the bottom line is that we don't take the Olympics seriously enough. We rolled out a C team. And if you don't bring your best players, you're going to get beat. That's the bottom line. Honduras wanted it more than our guys wanted it. Like we used to be gritty as hell and tenacious as hell, and we're not like that anymore. This team just wasn't good enough.
Well, those are two different things that we could talk about. But I want to kind of glom onto the first part, which is we didn't bring our best players. So who was available, do you think, that they didn't bring? And I guess the larger question is that a damning criticism on Kreis and his roster selection?
Well, I think his hands were somewhat tied in terms of who he could bring. But there's an entire senior team of players, most of whom were eligible, that was training, relatively speaking, at the same time as this game and playing in a friendly, relatively speaking, at the same time as this game.
But can I play devil's advocate?
You can, but you'll be wrong. Go ahead.
But the guys that were playing on the Olympic team had been training together, not only in an earlier camp, but had been together for quite a period of time, that it is arguable that any of those guys that you're thinking of would have never been allowed to have been called away from their team for that amount of time.
No, but, you can make changes. You can bring people in. Sometimes, I mean, it's, look.
Yeah, so instead of playing in the friendly, all of those under 24s, even Christian Pulisic, let's say, could have just magically popped into the squad for this one game, is what you're saying.
I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying some of them would have had to be there the whole time because you can't make, I don't think you can make universal changes. I'm not 100% down on the rules of how the CONCACAF qualifying works. You can't just change the whole thing. But you wouldn't have needed the whole thing. You only would have needed, if this was our C team, that means that this is 24 guys and it's our C team. So were there 48 guys better than this? Or was it just 23 guys better than this? Well, you didn't need 23 or 48. You probably only needed 5 or 6, right? You just have to take it more seriously. When you're talking about a decade of missing, it's not one cycle. It's like a decade of missing now. That means that your organization is screwing it up and your organization is not taking it seriously. That's what it means to me. It's not one guy on one camp. And it doesn't even matter if it's different versions and different reasons. The bottom line, if you miss for over a decade, then it's not on the individual players. It's you just did not take it seriously enough and bring out good enough talent. Bring your best or you're going to get beat. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I do think there is a tremendous number of limitations that kept them from being able to bring in the players that we probably would have liked to have seen. I think there's more to that story than we really understand. But I also want to just point out to everybody is that the overall value of the players that they did have was really only second to Mexico. And then the distance between them and the next team, which I think is Costa Rica, is like an insane amount of money. Just the player valuations on that you can find easily anywhere on the internet. And I still think that by and large, the person really mostly to blame for this, as much as I love him as the greatest player in Dallas Burn history, is Jason Kreis. Because one, I think he left out some players from the roster that he could have called up that would have given him an attacking talent. And two, I just felt like overall the way that he utilized the players that he did bring was really odd and poor. And in my mind, I think he in particular did a poor job of managing this setup. But overall, I agree with you, Buzz. The way the Federation treats the U23 team is a bit of a joke because they essentially only do it for this one thing, and I'm not sure how much you think you're going to get out of it if you're not participating in other tournaments like so many other countries do over the course of a year.
Yeah, there's definitely some blame on Jason, but when you look at this group, like you talk about the talent level, how many of these guys are actually starters in Major League Soccer? It's not very many, right? We all know that if we get our 100% legit U23 team.
I really go back and look at that list, Buzz. Those guys, most of those guys are key players on that team, are regular starters in their MLS. Dotson's a starter. Jesus a starter.
That's two.
Hold on, I'm running through the list. Glad's a starter. The other center back, I think, starts pretty regularly for his team.
No, Glad lost his job recently.
What about the kid that was playing left back? I think he starts pretty regularly for his team.
Vimes is one of the only ones that does.
Right, and then Dodson starts for Minnesota. Who's the other kid that I'm thinking of? The one that I can't remember. I mean, I went back and looked, and I think what I'm saying is that I think there's a perception that this roster was filled with bench guys from MLS, and I don't necessarily think that's true. I am of the belief that roster should have progressed and beaten Honduras, which, by the way, it only won one game in the tournament prior to that day.
Well,
so
I agree with you in that assessment that team should beat Honduras. That's what we said before the game. But that doesn't change the fact that if you bring your best Olympic team, we have a world-class, win the Olympics level U23 team if we actually bring them. And we didn't. We didn't even bring the B team. So it's like, it's not surprising that they didn't win. To me, you can indict Kreis, and I think you can, that he definitely made some mistakes. But the overall failure, when you talk about a decade of failure, that's not Kreis. So
no, but I do think that the failure to qualify in this particular cycle is different than the failure to qualify in the previous cycles, because I think you would argue that in the previous cycles you probably did take your A- B+ team.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go look. I don't remember.
Well, there was, in 4 years ago or however many years ago, they didn't have as many guys playing over in Europe, right? They didn't have a Christian Pulisic and a Tyler Adams and a Weston McKennie back then.
Well, Kreis specifically in the press conference afterwards said that, his roster sections are not 100% up to him. He said he's not the only one that's picking players here. It's like he's responsible to Berhalter.
Yeah.
So like that team is partially, like the starting 11's not, but the roster can build is partially made by Berhalter and whoever the technical director is these days is it still Ernie Stewart? So, the overall failure is on the giant organization, not on, it is a little bit like you got to go out and win the game. Don't get me wrong. But soccer is a sport where the players matter, right? I was using this example the other day. Look at Jurgen Klopp. You know how many players Jurgen Klopp's bought since he went to Liverpool? 24. He's literally rebuilt the whole squad, right? Because players matter. This is soccer. Players matter more than anything. Coaches hardly coach. Sure, yeah. Once the game starts, coaches got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Coaches playing, they can't do squat on the field. This players matter more than any other sport in this one. So, if you don't bring the right players, you're going to be beat. That's the bottom line for me.
Well, it did happen again, and we can now wait. At least it only will take 3 years before we can try again, not 4 years. We did get interesting news back here. Meanwhile, back up in Frisco, were you surprised to have seen how nice the new North Texas away kit turned out to be?
Oh, nice. It's delicious. Oh, my gosh. That's phenomenal. It's better than any Well, not any. It's better than all but about 3 FC Dallas alternate kits that they've ever produced, uh, which they can't sell, which is amazing. But it's gorgeous. Yeah. And the things that are so good about it is that like they have the North Texas Soccer Club so far has a template. Their home jersey is red, white shorts, red socks. Their away jersey is white, red shorts, white socks. They have a discernible, definable pattern. And this is a variation of that with a tiny little red pinstripe on a white. Now, ordinarily, I hate white kits. This thing is fantastic. I just hope they figure out a way to get it where people can buy it. Now, granted, look, it's hard to sell a secondary kit when your home kit probably only sells 10. I mean, that's how many North Texas kits I've seen in my life is 10. You know, so it's not likely that they're going to be able to sell it, but it is a phenomenal kit. It's better than what FC. Now, up until this new FC Dallas kit is phenomenal too, but it's better than the last 7 or 8 FC Dallas away kits for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I was really impressed with how it looks, and I agree with you on how they've set up the 2 different away and home kits. That is good. Yeah. All right, so you've also been spending a ton of time this week working for and covering Dallas Cup. Any particular notes that you want to bring to the pod about that?
Yeah, it's shocking that the U17 team, which is one of the most talented teams they've ever had, crashed out again. This is the U17's crashed out of the GA Cup like 2 years ago too. So I wonder about that bracket for some reason. I'm not sure what's going on there. Different players, but they still, like last time in the 17s at the GA Cup, they had Pepe and they had Jonathan Gomez. And, I mean, like it's still, it's ridiculous. Nico Carrera was in that team. Not Chris Richards, but Justin Che was in that team. I mean, Brian Reynolds was in that team, and they lost in the.
So I haven't seen any of those games, but obviously you have. From your perspective and your opinion, is this a function of overconfidence, underestimating the opponent, or maybe they're not as good as we thought they were?
No, that team from their end to the final third is fantastic. They got Diego Hernandez, who's already played for North Texas. They've got Knight Pickering, who's just was in the first team. The problem is that when they get into the final third, they're a bit of a mess. The 2 games they didn't do well, their finishing was not good, and that includes Pickering, who's usually a goal machine. He was off. I don't know why. There's a lot of crossing happening, which is not necessarily their bag. They're supposed to be Dallas, is when you're dribbling into the box and doing combos and that kind of thing. It just wasn't working in the final third. So I'm not 100% sure whether they just were feeling pressure or something, but them crapping out was a surprise. And then the U19s are doing great, which is the team that's been gutted already when all the pros signed out of it. Yet they're just steamrolling everything that's left in the Dallas Cup, which is fantastic for them. And the other thing is that the U15 team, which is also ridiculous, they have my guy Matthew Corcoran is playing down with them, which is his normal age level. And this is one thing I wanted to throw out to you as an example of how good I think Corcoran is. The U17 team where he usually plays got eliminated, and his team had a plus 24 goal differential in the group stage. So, yeah. And then they were in the quarterfinal yesterday, they were losing 2-0 in the second half. And then their keeper, who's the 6'5" kid, made a couple of saves and Corcoran scored. And then that opened the floodgates. And so they ended up winning 5-2. So but you remember on your radio show, we talked about how boring it is to watch him play. And I thought I would explain that. Like I thought of a good analogy. Corcoran is boring to watch play.
Right.
Yeah, super boring. And I thought of a good analogy. And the equivalent would be like if somebody that we knew that was into the NFL said, oh my gosh, Southlake Junior High has a center that is amazing. He's going to be in the NFL. And you and I were to go to watch it. We'd watch a dude snap a ball 80 times and we'd be like, this is boring as hell. That's the equivalent. He's a holding midfielder. He stands in the middle of the field. It barely looks like he's running at all, except that he's always got the ball. And every time somebody fumbles it more than a foot away from him, there he is taking it away from them and passing it and moving it on. It's just, the kid is phenomenal. And yet you can't tell. Like watching him play is horrible. It's like no fun at all. Unless you're like really into the minutia of what he's doing, then you can see it. And I don't mean that to be egotistical. I mean that most people will watch it and go, I wasted my time coming here. This is dumb. His whole team is really good, of course, but watching him is boring.
Yeah, I have not seen him yet in this particular tournament, but I do have an observation that I'm going to talk about more on the show tomorrow, because I don't know if this is... I don't know if what I'm about to say is really odd or unique or or just obvious. Maybe it's just obvious. Maybe everybody else has this same kind of observation as well. But I went out to Richland and watched some different boys games. And I haven't, it's been obviously 2 years since I've seen a Dallas Cup game. But every time I go, I'm always like, good Lord, this is all systems go, 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 go. Like boys soccer, even up to like the super group, is pretty much one speed, full throttle, and it's less skill and way more athleticism. Right? It's all about who can get there fastest. It's a lot of just super athleticism and not a ton of one-on-one ball skill work. You just don't see a ton of it in the Dallas Cup on the boys' side. But then yesterday on ESPN3, they were broadcasting the 3 or 4 girls' finals, and I found myself vastly far more entertained in watching the girls' games than I was the boys' games, because while the girls' games are clearly slower and there's not anywhere near as much defensive one-on-one pressure going on, the tactical play, the patience, and the ball skill of the girls is unbelievably impressive. I found that way more entertaining to watch than the boys' game. And I don't know, again, if I'm unique in this, Buzz, I don't know if you have any sort of a familiar or similar opinion, or you're going to tell me I'm an idiot.
No, I'm not going to tell you an idiot. I know exactly what you mean. I think you would like Corcoran's play then, because he definitely slows the game down and controls it and moves it around. What you would like about him is his sublime touch, and the ball's always where he wants it. And the ball's all ready for the next touch. The guy, I'll give you another name though, at the U17 team, there's a guy named Anthony Ramirez, who has been in the past slightly undersized and slightly frail. He was in the past a pure 10. We know now that Dallas doesn't use one of those. So most of he's playing as a false wing style. I think you would like him. He's got a ton of ball skill too. Now, you're right that there is a lot of go and a lot of physicality in the boys' game. Even the Dallas teams, which are phenomenal on the ball, have phenomenal touch. They still have a whole lot of verticality and go to them. But those guys in those contexts, probably Diego Hernandez too, also with the 17s. I think you'd like those 3 guys in that context that you're talking about, because it's not just a track meet with those guys. They're willing to move it around. And the guys that do that, I think, are one of the things that separates guys to the elite level that you want to talk about making it to the next bit, is because it's not just get it and go. There is some thought process. There is some, intellectual pace of play kind of decisions being made. That's one of the things I look for with elite players for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be critical of the boys' game in any way. It is what it is. It's just kind of a byproduct of the high levels of tea they're running around on the field with all those guys, and it is how that game works. But because I very rarely get to watch youth girls soccer anymore, seeing it on TV yesterday or on the iPad, I just was really there was a girl playing for Solar in the U17 game, Shaw, I think her last name is.
Yeah.
Holy crap, she is a flat-out baller. By any definition, I don't care what gender you're talking about, she is a baller of the highest degree.
Yeah, Jaden Shaw. One of the FC Dallas guys said that she's the best female player he's ever seen.
She is farting phenomenal, and I'm sure she'll be on the national team, and we'll all enjoy the fact that she's from this area. But I so enjoyed watching those games yesterday. They were really, really good, entertaining games. Not all of them ended up being entertaining at the end, but like that particular game, I think Solar was up 1-0.
Yep.
And that goal the girl hit in injury time to make it 2-0 was a phenomenal goal. Just a phenomenal goal. Again, if a boy had hit that, I would be saying the same thing. It was just a really, really good goal, and I've enjoyed. I'm sorry I'm prattling on about it, but that's been my big observation of this Dallas Cup, and I'm glad they've added the girls back to the tournament.
Oh, yeah, and not to be a dead horse, this is exactly what we talk about with the women's national team. These games that you watch at the Dallas Cup, there's absolutely a ton of talent in these girls' games. Phenomenal skill. It's this insane physicality and speed of the men. That's why the U15 boys team can beat the women's national team. That's the difference. That doesn't mean that the women's game is not phenomenal, and that doesn't mean that these girls that were playing at Toyota Stadium didn't deserve full credit, because those games, 3 of the 4 were phenomenal watching, and that 17 game in particular is one of the highest skilled games I've seen in quite a while. There were multiple national team players in that game, not just Jaden Shaw. She is the one, but there were multiple other national team. The number, she plays number 20, but the 6 behind her, that's a tall girl for Solar, I also think is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So, there's loads of reasons to go watch the girls. But there also is with the guys, when you get this Styles Cup's a little bit lopsided because it doesn't have the international team. So you're getting some trashings on the men's sides too. But when you get 2 of the really good boys teams going against each other, really skilled ones, like when Solar plays FC Dallas, it's not just, there is that pace component, physicality, but there's a bags of skill too. And I recommend it to anybody. The stadium games this weekend, just like the girls were yesterday, the stadium games are going to be phenomenal if you can go take some time and watch them. Pretty much maybe not the U18s, that'll be the weak link because the 18s are combined. Everybody plays 18, 19 combined combo. So like pure 18 teams are rare, but across the board, the rest of them probably will be phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this other thing about all of this, and I don't mean this as a demonstration just to kind of point out how old I am, but it is very clear to me that by and large, not even by and large, I'm going to say just universally, it's very clear to me there are girls that are 16 years old that are playing the game of soccer at an infinitely higher skill level than boys were when I was 16, 17, 18 years old. Like the level of play with 16-year-old girls in 2021 is so much better than it was on the boys' side back in the 70s and 80s. It's unbelievable how good the game is.
Oh, yeah. Any of those girls teams yesterday would have throttled any team I've been in, played in, my whole life without any question. Yeah, the skill level's phenomenal.
I was standing on the sideline of a Texans. They were playing some team from Miami wearing Juventus jerseys. I think it was their MLS team that's in the MLS Next group. And there was a girl standing on the sideline kicking a ball with another girl, and she couldn't have been more than 12 years old. And it was during halftime, and I was just watching her play the ball. And she was hitting the ball with the outside of her foot. It was just basic passing back and forth. But her comfort level on the ball at the age of 11 was insane. And she was just some random girl standing on the sideline. And I was really caught off guard at her display of ball comfort. It was really amazing. So, again, I'm so glad they've added the girls back to this tournament. And next year, when hopefully COVID has diminished enough for international travel and they allow international girls teams to come play in Dallas Cup again, yeah. I just think it's exponentially going to make the tournament that much better.
Oh, it's going to be fun for sure, yeah.
All right, I'll quit prattling on about that. Anything else you want to add to the podcast today, my dear friend Buzzard?
Well, let me double check my list and make sure that we got everything.
Is that the one you've written in pencil?
Yeah, this one's in pencil.
Okay.
Just a couple of injury things. Lucci on the conference call mentioned that I had reported that I heard from somebody that Emma Tuamasi had an abductor issue. Lucci said something about having a heart problem on the conference call.
What?
And they were limiting him in training. And I was like, wait, what? And they said they're not real worried about him, but apparently he's a couple of weeks away from letting him train, I'm like, a heart issue? That's crazy. So I went back and listened to it twice, made sure that's what he said. I couldn't believe it. So that's why Emma's not been involved, other than whatever abductor problem. He didn't admit that to somebody else.
There's a big difference between abductor and heart issues.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's crazy.
So Lucci again doubled down on Paxton. They're being really smart with him and really careful with him. He did get some minutes, but still they're really watching him. Kid gloves. Do not expect Paxton to play in a real game soon. I'm telling you, don't get ready for that. What else? Oh, Thomas Roberts is out of the boot, but Lucci says 2 more weeks probably at least, which will match up with basically the 4 to 6 that I reported. That'll be close to 4. So we'll see how in a couple more weeks it goes with that. What else do I have? Lucci talked about on the conference call also, he talked about Acosta, Brian Acosta, having some renewed energy and like a really positive mindset, and like that he's really hungry to redeem himself basically from last year when he was hurt a lot and was in and out of the lineup for basically half the season. So Lucci was raving about that. So prepare yourself for lots of Brian Acosta early in the season, basically, based on what he just said. And I think that's pretty much all my notes. Oh, the one other thing is I listened to, when I was listening to Lucci this week, he specifically mentioned some guys that are unsigned that have been having good camps. So I'm not sure who he means, other than like there's a couple of academy kids, Benny Redzik and Colin Smith, that have been playing with them. Or maybe he means a couple of the draft picks. Maybe he means Tebow, who officially signed with North Texas now, but isn't with FC Dallas. Or maybe he means Pickering. I'm not really sure. I don't think he means Waldeck, who's the North Texas guy who can play left back or holding mid. But Dallas does have a couple open roster spots, so it would not floor me to see them maybe sign some kid possibly out of nowhere here, like they did Tanner last year. So for him to have mentioned that unsigned players, because he specifically joked that he didn't want to say their name because he didn't want an agent to get fired up and ask for a bunch of money. So it'll be kind of fun to see, like, was he really hinting around that maybe something's going to happen with one of these kids? So that's something to keep an eye on. Maybe try and figure out who he's talking about. So keep an eye on training going forward. Knock on wood. See who's doing good. Read Third Degree.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, you're feeling 10 being most likely that Serge Aguero is going to sign for FC Dallas.
Yep.
That's minus 10.
Busquets is coming. He's retiring from
Busquets.
Yeah, going to come in and play 6. Going to back up Edwin. That's what I figure he means.
Busquets is going to back up Edwin.
There's another example of a guy that's boring as hell to watch play, but is amazing, right? So that's a Corcoran example of
we talked a little bit about kit stuff, but the one thing that I wanted to comment about was Saturday when we were watching the game down in San Antonio. Were you surprised to see them wear the light blue? By the way, it was the debut of the new powder blue jerseys with the navy shorts. But they were wearing red socks, and I thought that looked great, but I was surprised to see them wearing red socks.
I think it looked awesome. I mean, some of that may have been a response to what San Antonio was wearing. It's possible because San Antonio was in their all black that they felt like the blue was too dark. Mm-hmm. So they went with the red. But the red to me I love when it's broken up like that. The red's better. I mean, go with that. That looks really good.
Yeah, the powder blue, navy, red is a great combination. I agree.
Yeah, Red Sox period. You could throw white shorts with that powder blue and the Red Sox. That would be lit too.
That would be the official Dallas Tornado replica kit.
It would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be phenomenal.
That would be. We always talk about how they're always talking about how this is a kind of an homage to the Tornado, but it wouldn't. It would be really an homage if they wore it with white shorts and the Red Sox.
Yeah, absolutely. Also the Academy's been wearing the current red home top with blue shorts and blue socks. I think that looks better because then you get a red to blue gradient kind of a vibe happening. So that looks good too.
Has the senior team been wearing red, blue, red?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the red, blue, blue was a nice mix up. The Academy will do more varieties than the first team will.
And then just because I know people are expecting me to be cynical and cliche, then the other part of me just assumes the reason why they wear blue shorts and red socks is because it's the same thing they wear with the home kit and it's cheaper, less inventory.
Well, so far we haven't necessarily seen now that the white uniform is gone, we don't necessarily know that they even have white stuff anymore. Because the home jersey is the red, blue, red, right? And the away we think that the new blue, powder blue, and then navy shorts and socks. So if you're going up against an all black team, you don't have any white stuff now. You're stuck with the red socks basically. So it's like it'll be interesting this season to watch Dallas when they play teams on the road that have darker uniforms at home. Will they have some lighter version of sock than that blue sock?
Because, do we know what they wore today?
I do not, but think about like if you go to Orlando and Orlando's in all purple, for example, and you're wearing your powder blue and your navy shorts, what socks are you going to wear against that all dark purple look?
Oh yeah, well probably even a better one would be DC. If you go to DC, DC's wearing their essentially all black.
Yeah, lots of people wear all black. LSU wears all black. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what color Dallas wears most often with that powder blue jersey because of that idea that it's supposed to be light-ish, right? In quotes, that light combo. So we don't know of any white socks. So there's red socks maybe the look because all we've ever seen this spring, both uniforms now wear navy shorts. They're slightly different.
That's a good point.
So it's going to be that. If you're a kit nerd like us, that stuff's fascinating. So I'm actually, a certain part of me is actually really looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. See what they have, promise they have.
It's funny, and this is not on the run sheet, and I'm going to bring it up because it's something that happened this week, and it was a shitstorm that I don't think you intended to start, but boy, you did stir the mud up a lot when you posted some graphics of all of the 2021 MLS kits broken up by, I don't even know how you did. I guess you decided to put one group of white, one group of the darkest colors, and then one group of what you would consider to be something other than dark colors.
Well, basically I did it last year before they sort of loosened the reins a little bit, when it was like everybody was white, and then all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of black and navy, and there were only like 6 kits that weren't either super dark or all white. And so then I just tweaked those graphics for this year. And so there were a couple purples in the black and blue, and there's a couple of green and black stripes that are pretty dark, but I put them on, the green's kind of prominent, so they kind of went. I mean, you can nitpick whatever and put the green and black on the dark and put the purple on the colors, whatever you want to do. Bottom line is I just divided up sort of in gradients to kind of show the chunks of color in the MLS are not there. That basically you're getting a lot of white and a lot of really dark.
Well, it was funny. The reaction to that was pretty damning. Like, everybody was like, "Oh, Adidas sucks," and look at all this, all of the obvious reaction. And I wondered if the way you had displayed it was, I don't know, falsely creating a perception of what it looked like. So I went back and took all the same files and put all the kits together in a single file based per club. And I think that the whole thing looks less generic and uniform when you put it together that way, and shows that there's probably a lot more variety from club to club or league-wide than the way you present it. And again, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying I think it's interesting how that plays when you look at it visually based on different groupings.
Oh, for sure. And overall, I want to be clear that it's trending in the right direction. The fact that a whole bunch of teams went away from white. Now they all pick powder blue, but at least that's more variety. And Dallas is one of 2 teams that doesn't have a white or black, basically. They have 2 colors. The other one is Seattle.
Well, Houston has, I guess Houston's is black and orange, and then Nashville is a navy blue and yellow.
I lumped navy in with black because they're both neutrals and they're both dark. So like
Seattle is purple and green.
Yeah, purple and green.
Let's see, who else would you say?
But like on my colored graphic, there was only one team that was on that colored graphic that is clearly red and clearly powder blue.
Yeah,
like everyone else has either got a white or a dark or super dark in their mix. So credit to FC Dallas. Rock on.
The kit that I'm really fascinated to see in more detail is the new Colorado away, because I've seen 2 very clear pictures of it looking very different. One where it looks like a white shirt with green trimming and accents, and the other one is where it has this mint green hue to it as the body, the main fabric, with the green accent. And I do think that shirt actually probably looks more green overall in person than it appeared in some of the photographs that they put out. I don't think it's a white shirt is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I agree with you. It's like the multiple images of it, like on the shop, are definitely like a minty. I mean, it's pretty white, but it's definitely, they call it a green kit, and it's definitely got an overall like almost toothpastey kind of, not as bad as Portugal's jersey, but in that neck of the woods, certainly to it, that sort of limeish white, if you want to call it that, vibe going on there. It'll be interesting to see it in person, as you say.
Yeah, and the other thing that if you get a chance to go look at the photos, and the best place to go look at these jerseys is at the MLS store, because they've got high-definition, high-resolution photos of each of these kits, is where we source these, by the way.
Yeah.
Although in our version, they're small for social media purposes. You really should go look at all these kits in a large resolution, because I think so many of these kits at a distance just look like but when you get up close to them, they have tons of really interesting detail. Some of the sublimations and stuff in the fabric is really interesting, and it gets missed at distance. But there's some really cool stuff going on some of these shirts that I just think gets panned because of the fact they think everybody's wearing white and black.
Yeah, Dan always talks about the details are what matters in the kits, for him, and that kind of thing up close is what most people wear them to talking to somebody, they're looking to see it. I'm a big picture macro guy because of what I do, which is television. So like for me, what I care about is what it looks like from the top of the stands or on television. And there's a total school of thought that it's like, I care about the details when I'm standing there wearing it. I totally get that. That's just not my jam. I'm about, I'm about the difference between Liverpool and Manchester United is Manchester United wears white shorts and black socks.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, to me, that's the stuff that matters. Branding.
Yeah. My favorite comment that I saw online, and I apologize to whoever I'm stealing this from and not giving credit to because I can't remember who it was. It may have been Dustin Chrisman, which made the comment that they were having a hard time wrapping around their head how they got Adidas to agree, LA Galaxy got Adidas to agree to do a throwback of an old Nike jersey when we can't get Adidas to agree to give DC United a throwback of an old Adidas jersey from 1996 for DC United.
Yeah, the LA Galaxy throwback is amazing, but the 96 DC jersey is probably the best jersey in the history of Major League Soccer, and they went away from it. I can't believe it. It's like sometimes the people that run that, once Kevin Payne left DC United, it's like the people up there, I don't know what they're doing.
I'm telling you why. It's 100% a sponsor position issue. The 3 stripes across the center of the chest created all sorts of problems for putting an ad on it.
I could see that.
I absolutely think that's the reason why they decided to get away from it. Because if you look at their logo now, the Lidios logo, how would you integrate that with the 3 stripes across the chest and have it look right?
You'd have to move it down or something.
You'd have to put it on the belly or something. But I 100% believe that, because if you add the 3 stripes on either side of it or around it or embed it, you then make it look like you're adding the stripes as part of the sponsor's logo, and they don't want that.
Well, I was thinking of the old Fire look or the Boca Juniors look, but that's a solid bar, and
right.
That's another club that ruined their brand. Was the Chicago Fire. They had a clear Boca Juniors style brand that was significant and different, and they wrecked it. Yeah.
Well, you know what should happen? Adidas should sponsor DC United,
there you go.
Because we all have to realize back in the day, those jerseys, those 3 stripes was nothing more than an advertisement for Adidas. That was a sponsor logo for Adidas in that format, and it would be cool if somehow they could work that out, put those back on there, and that essentially becomes a sponsor ad for Adidas. That's the solution.
That'd be perfect.
I love when I solve the world's problems, Buzz.
Perfect. Like your master grid for the next year's schedule that you did.
My manifesto for the FIFA World Calendar. Yes,
that was good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've covered it all.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
By the way, shout out to Vancouver for keeping the best home jersey in the business going. The white with the red numbers and the blue bar and the red numbers on the back.
Yep.
Kept that going. Good on you, Vancouver. Bad on you, Montreal, with the snowflake. The worst brand and reband ever. I mean, it's so bad. It's the worst.
See, I don't hate it as much as you do.
Oh my God, it's so bad.
But then you ruined it for everybody when you called it a robot's anus.
It's a giant anus.
Which was already saved for the Atlanta Stadium, but whatever.
Yeah, it's not a banjo kid, at least. I give you that.
Don't forget, everybody, you can go find all of your favorite jerseys, even the ones with a robot anus on them, at Third Degree. As Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90. Shop soccer90.com for all of those shirts from FC Dallas, from all over MLS and international club gear, and U.S. soccer gear. New in the shop are Adidas shin guards in both youth and adult sizes, because we all need to be protected from getting kicked in the shin. And don't forget, Third Degree listeners receive 25% off when they use the promo code Third Degree at checkout. By the way, I haven't done this in a few weeks. I just want to reiterate how much I appreciate Pappy Check for writing this kick-ass theme song that's probably playing behind me as we exit the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Pappy Check. Best theme song in the business.
Thanks, Buzz. Appreciate all the insight and information. We will speak to you next week, FC Dallas Curious listener, at Third Degree, the podcast.
Dan Crooke.
He's missing.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.